Hey everybody, welcome to our live edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe here. I'm going to bring the rest of our crew on board as we are going live for the first time post-game here. So welcoming on, you see Ashley Bastock there. There's our guy Lance Reisland, and of course, Mary Kay Cabot is here as well. So the whole crew after the Browns lose to the Bengals 17-16, and there's a lot to get into here. Of course, as we break down everything that happened in this game, we'll be with you here for the next let's say 30 minutes, a little longer. If some folks need to jump out and go keep working, they'll do that. But stick with us here and jump in the chat. Be nice to us so I don't have to kick anybody out. I don't like to have to do that. All right, let's get to it. Browns 17-16 losers. Mary Kay, we are going to start with you here. There's so much to this game. The defense played so well in the second half. Joe Flacco and the offense put together these long, just time-consuming drives that it's exactly what they wanted to do. The kicker missed two kicks. I mean, he makes that field goal, and maybe we're having a completely different discussion. Coming out of this game, I guess, where are you at with this football team after week one?
I'll tell you what, I am very, very encouraged about this football team for the Browns and for their fans after what I saw in this football game, because if you eliminate 4 egregious errors, they played a heck of a football game. They outgained the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't have the game book with me in front of me, but 3-something to 1-something. The defense was absolutely lights out. After that first drive, the defense only gave up a net of 74 yards and only 7 in the second half. So I thought that was outstanding. I thought they really found their way in the second half of the game. And, great performance by Miles. A lot of these young guys, Mason had a really nice performance, Carson. I just don't think you can say enough. The only thing they really didn't do defensively was they didn't take the ball away. So that was something that, they've really worked on doing. Once again, you're never going to win football games if you're losing the turnover battle. And they lost the turnover battle 0 for 2, right? So, you just can't do that. So I thought that defensively, I thought that was the key, that they really shut them down. They shut down Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. Are you kidding me? Look at these numbers. It's fantastic. It's hard to even believe that they lost this game. And then offensively, I thought Joe Flacco did a lot of really good things. He did a lot of really, really good things. He put them in position to kick the game-winning field goal. A couple of times, he had them in position to win this football game in the end several times, and bad things happened. Missed extra point, missed field goal, 2 interceptions that went off the hands of receivers. So these are mistakes that when I look at this game, they really outplayed the Bengals. They just made some mistakes. And so I think Joe Flacco should be feeling good about himself. I think Miles should feel good about the way he set the tone. I think the rookies should feel good about some of the things that they did. And now they've got to solve the kicker problem, and they've got to tighten up the mistakes and the turnovers.
Yeah, so I want to get everyone else's thoughts. Ashley, where do you come away from this team after this week 1 loss?
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? I mean, I think the kicker thing is just the obvious problem that this team hasn't solved. I mean, I wrote a little bit about the post-game reaction to Andre Schmidt and, what he said, what some of his teammates said about him. But look, I think this is a problem that really goes back to the fact that this team extended Dustin Hopkins after one really good, I'll say it again, really good season. And then he had a career worst 2024, and they let him ride it out this offseason and hoped things would change. So you look at what they did, right? They let him come back. They bring in Andre Schmidt as sort of like camp leg competition, an insurance policy. And ultimately, Dustin Hopkins doesn't work out through those issues. And now you're kind of left with Andre Schmidt. Now, they said it was about his body of work. That's why he won that job. For us, it's hard to gauge because we really only saw him kick a handful of times in preseason games, right? Even when he was here on the practice squad last year, it's not like we ever saw him kick. So now they're in that position where I couldn't help but think today, like, had they just pivoted after Dustin Hopkins' bad 2024, or had they not rushed to extend him in 2023 and just let his contract end at the end of last season, maybe they would be in a little bit different spot right now. But where they are right now, there's no obvious plan B. There's not another kicker on the practice squad or anything. So that's it for me. But that being said, as I was watching that game, I told Lance before we started recording, especially that sequence where the defense got 3 straight sacks against Joe Burrow. It was Miles, and then Isaiah McGuire, your guy, Dan. And after that sequence, I was like, there's no way they're losing this game. Like, a football team just doesn't lose a game after some dominance like that. The way that defense played in the second half, it was like they woke up, because the first drive of the first half, especially, I thought they started a little slow. Still not happy that they didn't get takeaways. But in the second half of that game, I felt like it was what we saw all summer. And I did leave this game feeling really good about all the main rookies. So that's kind of where I stand. And I feel like this offense can be functioning with Joe Flacco in the same way it was in 2023. Like, it's not necessarily going to be the most explosive thing, but you're going to control possession. And I think you can win that way. If you control the time of possession, he is efficient. He had time, I thought, to operate back there today. He was making good decisions. Those interceptions were fluky. So I don't feel like terrible about this team. But, after a loss like this, you always wonder how much is this going to eat away at them potentially. So we'll see.
All right, Lance, it's your turn. Your feelings here after this first game. How did you come away feeling about the Cleveland Browns?
Well, I think the Browns have they had a lot to be proud of. They played very well. They played very hard. The defense played very well, but I was very frustrated, right? Because as a coach, I will tell you, that's a game you should have won. You can't hold Joe Burrow to 113 yards, play the way the defense played, and lose the game. So I think that hopefully they have that attitude where they're kind of irritated by it, right? Because I'll be honest with you, sometimes when you get thumped by a good team and they're just better than you, and that's a lot easier to accept than this. Kay said it best. They outplayed the Bengals, and they outplayed the Bengals pretty much, in my opinion, from after that first drive. If you look through the whole game, they outplayed the Bengals on both sides of the ball, but it tells you the margin for error with the Browns, right? They have to find ways to win like they are finding ways to lose right now. And somebody's got to make a play. I thought they did enough right now today to win. I thought the defense did enough. I thought the offense did enough. I thought that defensive line is kind of what I thought it would be. I thought Schlesinger, he's been a really, really high-level player in terms of tackling and getting people lined up. I was a little bit, I would say the one thing, the takeaway I had was I wasn't sure why some of the matchups, like I wasn't sure why Newsome was press coverage on Chase so much and things like that. But, every coach does their own thing. I just thought they played well enough to win. They play hard. My takeaway is frustration, because you do enough to win, you work really hard, and then the kicker doesn't make his kicks. And once again, it's a team game. I understand that, but as Ashley said, this is a problem that's kind of been going on now. And when you have a team that's really, really has to play close to the best, you got to have a good kicking game. You got to have those automatic points, and they just don't right now. And you saw it today. You lose a game because you can't make an extra point in a field goal.
So I'm going to say this. I understand the idea that the Browns did outplay the Bengals, because they did. I mean, you look at every statistic. If you just looked at this game book, if you just looked at the box score and didn't see the final score, you'd say the Cleveland Browns are 1-0. What a win by the Browns. And I think that's what concerns me more than anything. When I look at this game, almost everything went the Browns' way, right? Almost everything went the Browns' way, except for, of course, the 2 missed kicks. And then you had the Judy drop that turned into a pick and the Tillman drop that turned into a pick. But they got a great performance from the defense. They gave up 7 yards in the second half. They controlled the football on the offensive side. Now, they couldn't run the ball today. That was obviously an issue, but they found ways to kind of fake run the ball with those little swing passes to Dylan Sampson and all of that stuff. So they were getting production in those ways. This was kind of everything the Browns needed it to be, minus those 2 mistakes. And my concern here, Mary Kay, is like, this is easily the worst defense they're going to play for another month. And maybe the worst football team. I don't know what the Bengals are going to be long term. I don't know if this is going to be a playoff team or not. I think most people look at the Bengals and say they're a playoff team. But they did everything they needed to do against a team they match up really well against, and they lost. And if they play the same way against Baltimore next week, I don't think they're going to lose by 1. They might lose by 10. So I guess a part of me wants to feel good and spin this in a positive light, but it's hard for me to do that because there's so little margin for error with the way this football team has to play, and they made too many of those mistakes today, and I guess that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's so obvious why they lost this game, and I think that we would be feeling completely different about this football team right now had Andre made that kick, and they could have walked out of here with a victory. And then, of course, the complete narrative always changes. We always overreact to a victory. We overreact to a loss. And the truth of the matter is, as you guys have said, the margin for error, the margins are so thin. But I do agree that it's going to get harder from here. It's going to get harder. But I also think that they're going to get better. And one of the things that I wrote about after the game is the fact that Joe Flacco, the truth of the matter is, did not have much time on task with this offense in training camp. He didn't. They were conducting a four-way quarterback competition. I hope they figured out that they can never do that again. Okay, you can't do that. You have to figure out by the time you get to minicamp who your starting quarterback is going to be. Maybe two guys can go at it a little bit in training camp, but certainly not four. He did not have enough time on task with these receivers. They don't necessarily have their chemistry and their complete timing down, and they need to get that. That does take time. And they're going to have to go back to the drawing board this week. They're going to have to work together. They're going to have to communicate more, study more, and rep it more. So I think that that's one of the problems. Now, I also think that when Quinshawn joins them, which could happen next week in Baltimore, depending on what happens with his meeting with the NFL this week, then I think you're talking about a different offense. You guys saw what happened with the running game today. They didn't have much of a running game. I think they rushed for 49 yards, okay? That's not going to cut it. And Jerome Ford averaged 1 point something. Dylan Sampson averaged 2.4. I really have to believe that when Quinshawn is back, that they are going to have that 1-2 dynamic duo that they hope to have. So you're going to have Quinshawn as your workhorse featured back on first and second down. Then you have Dylan. And Dylan has demonstrated that he can play on other downs besides third down as well. But I think when you have the synergy of those two guys in there, then you're going to have a running game. And you'll have more of an offense. And you'll be able to support Joe more. I mean, he attempted, 41 passes today? That's too much. I think that's too much. So I think it's going to look different. But I do think that the defense is showing signs of being good. We don't know how good yet, but showing signs of being good. The offense, I think there's upside. Really young guys. I mean, look, this was Dylan Sampson's first NFL game. This was Harold Fannon's first NFL game. Isaiah Bond, first NFL game, right? I mean, you had young guys out there trying to play NFL football, and sometimes it takes time. So I do think that this offense is going to continue to get better every week, and let's see where that takes them.
So Ashley, you kind of touched on this. Again, another area of concern I have. I'm just going to play. I'm going to be the downer on this whole pod. The concerns I have, right, were you mentioned the kicking situation, right, and this decision to go with Andre Schmidt after, like, you knew coming out of last season that Dustin Hopkins was damaged. Now, did you believe he could turn it around? Sure, obviously. They stuck with him for a reason. They believed he could be 2023 Dustin Hopkins again. Unfortunately, one of the themes of this team is they keep trying to recapture that 2023 magic. We'll see. Can he be Dustin Hopkins again? The answer was no. And then they were left with Andre Schmidt, who'd never kicked in a real game before. Said Tillman, right? They kind of just give him the number 2 spot. Now, he was good today, but then in the biggest spot in the game, he drops the ball. And so, look, maybe Said gets better over time. Maybe it works out. But it's these little decisions like this. And, again, with the whole way the running back situation played out, you drafted 2 running backs and you couldn't run the ball week 1. And now we've got to see if Quinshawn Judkins can be, like, how long is it going to take him? Is he going to hit the ground and be Quinshawn Judkins week 1? Is it going to take 2 weeks, 3 weeks for him to really kind of figure things out? It's not having training camp going to hurt? There's still a lot of questions there, I think. And again, I just wish they didn't have to play this stretch where it was like Baltimore, Green Bay, whose defense was awesome today. Baltimore, Green Bay, Detroit, who I think is better than they showed. I just think they were playing a really great Green Bay team. I mean, this stretch is going to be so unforgiving. And it feels like some of the choices the Browns made, at least in this game in particular, came back to bite them. Or they're just going to take time to sort of develop into what they envisioned them being.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've highlighted these first 6 games on this schedule pretty continuously and in different ways. I mean, I wrote a story this week on DeJuan Jones going up against Trey Hendrickson and kind of outlined, look, this is only the first edge rusher, like star edge rusher he's going to have to face. There are more coming every single week from now up until they play Pittsburgh when they get back from London. That's so far from now. And they have to contend with TJ Watt. So, like, I worry from the sense of, look, I think when we were in that locker room today, I did not feel a lot of the frustration that I think was just very palpable last season. Especially as it got later into the season, and especially once they were eliminated. I didn't feel that. I do think this loss felt very much like a 2024 Cleveland Browns loss to me, and that concerns me because, again, it just kind of goes back to all these problems that you supposedly solved or thought you had solved in the offseason that really weren't, or at least potentially aren't yet. And this stretch is so brutal, like to be able to stay in contention just mathematically, you're going to have to win some games that you shouldn't win. And this was very much a game they could have and should have won today. So that kind of just adds to it for me, even though there were things, as I said off top, that I come away from today feeling at least okay or good about. It didn't really rectify any of the potential like pitfalls that I saw with this team and with this roster.
Yeah, Lance, I mean, today, and again, like I want to be careful, right? Because it's week 1. Like Mary Kay said, Andre Schmidt makes that field goal. We're having a different discussion. That's the margins in the NFL sometimes, right? Like you make a field goal and you're super happy you miss a field goal and everything's going to crap, right? So you don't want to overreact, especially after week 1. Week 1 is always wonky. Week 1 is always weird. But Lance, I guess based on your opinions to coming into this game, did this game reinforce things? Did it surprise you? What did you, the stuff you felt good about, do you still feel good about? The stuff you felt bad about, do you still feel bad about? Like where are you at with all of that?
Well, I thought the defense and the rookies were exactly what I thought they'd be. I was actually telling Ashley before we started, Dylan Sampson's runs a lot heavier than he really is. I was really impressed with his ability to break tackles. So he's going to be, if he doesn't have to be the bell cow, he's going to be a really good change of pace. And I also think Jerome Ford can be better in a third down situation or a third down back because he does pass protect pretty well. I think, obviously when Junkins gets back, I think he's going to hit the ground running because his style of running, they ran power and counter and wide zone. They ran all that at Ohio State. So those are things he understands. I think his issue would be in pass protection, right? And being able to make sure that he has blocking the right people. My biggest concern was the movement up front by the offensive line. Now, I do think Quinshon Junkins will help because he's heavier, but they didn't get a lot of movement today on their double teams. They didn't get a lot of vertical displacement. So if you look at the line of scrimmage, both defenses were kind of controlling the line of scrimmage. And every time that ball was snapped, it's almost like Cincinnati was a yard deep in the backfield. And that just tells you that they're winning the line of scrimmage. And I would say that would be my biggest concern. Now, the thing that I'm excited about the most was the thing that they did well, they can repeat. That run game, like you said, you can have, those are part of the NFL run game. That's part of the run game at every level. Now, those swing passes, like you said, those are important, and that can add to your run game. But I think if they're going to get back to an identity of being a physical bunch, like Mary Kay said, throwing the ball 45 times. Joe Flacco, who is we all agree is probably a top 5 quarterback, threw it 23 times today. So you got to stay committed to that run game, and you got to figure out how you're going to. And I thought they did so many things well, but the bottom line is you lost, and it's a product based NFL, right? Doesn't matter what you did well, you lost. You're 0-1. So they got to figure those things out. I would hope that you go in, you're a little irritated. That that losing a game like this should irritate you and get you back to work. But there was a lot to be hopeful for, especially that defensive line, that defense seven, Schlesinger, those guys. I'd like to see Delpit make more plays. I've said that before. I think we've got to create some turnovers. That's what the Browns don't do. They don't create any turnovers, and that's going to kill them down the stretch. You got to have, so it's like easy yards on offense. You got to create some short fields for your offense. So I don't know. I'm still kind of where I'm at in terms of what I think they can be. I still think they're good in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I really think they're good on defense, and that will give you a chance, just like they had today in a lot of games. And obviously, none of the things they did were fluky. The things they did well can be repeatable.
Yeah, so that's one of the good things, right, Mary Kay? Especially this defensive line, right? You get into that fourth quarter, and you have that stretch where Myles Garrett has back-to-back sacks, Isaiah McGuire has a sack. Like I think I tweeted after that series, like that's the defensive line we've been talking about since Philly, right? So that's one of those things that you come into the game thinking the defensive line is going to be really good, and you leave the game, even with the result, thinking, okay, the defensive line is going to be really good. Joe Flacco, you come into the game thinking, okay, this is who Joe Flacco is. Now, like you guys mentioned, 45 passes is too many. Lance, I'll save you a little headache here. You said Joe Flacco was a top 5 quarterback. You meant Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow, absolutely. Save that for me.
Burrow.
I didn't know I said that. Appreciate that.
Burrow did only throw 23 times, right? Like Joe Flacco throwing 45 times is not your formula. But Joe Flacco ran the offense. He was pretty efficient for the most part. Obviously had the 2 turnovers. They weren't really his fault. The throw to Judy was a little questionable, but it shouldn't have been intercepted, right? That was just a weird outcome on that throw. So you feel good about Joe Flacco at least being able to be this team's starting quarterback for a little while, despite what the people in our YouTube comments arguing about Shador want to have happen. So yes, even in my cold dead heart, Mary Kay, I am able to look at this game and some of the things that we thought could be really good were actually good today. And maybe Quinshon Judkins does kind of get this running game kicked into gear a little bit. So it probably shouldn't be all doom and gloom in this game, coming out of this game. It's just, I guess for me, what I look at is this mountain they're about to climb. And I'm like, I'm not sure if they have all the equipment needed to actually be able to climb this mountain.
Well, like I said, I think that they showed that they have some things that they can build on. And we know that the defensive line is one of those things. So I think they can hang their hat on that. I don't think we're seeing a mirage out there. I don't think we were seeing a mirage when they fared well against the Philadelphia Eagles in those 2 practices against the Eagles. That's a pretty good offensive line, even though they had some injuries. So I still do think that this defensive line is going to hold up. And I also think it's going to get better. Why? Because this was Mason Graham's first game. This was Carson's first game. Mike Hall's going to be coming back. Alex and Isaiah still finding their way a little bit. So once they work together a little bit more, it was Malik Collins' first time in there with these guys too. So I do think that what we saw tonight from the defensive line is something to build on. And I think it's going to get better. I think they're going to figure out, oh, that's how this works when we do this. That's how this works when we kick this guy down inside. I think that they're going to tweak it. I mean, Jim Schwartz is really good at what he does. I think now that he knows what his personnel is going to look like out on the grass, then he's going to change it up and make sure that everybody's playing to their strengths or move these guys around in ways that he didn't know to do, maybe even heading into this game. So I do think that this defensive line, this defensive front is going to be better. Once again, there are new things on this football team, even more so than some of the teams that we're going to be seeing them play over the next few weeks. There's a lot of young guys, a lot of new things going on. I mean, 2 starters on the defensive front alone that are rookies, that right there, just screams new. So I think that the defensive line is something they can walk out of here thinking, okay, this has the potential to be good this season. And then, again, offensively, you're right, Dan, you are pointing out something that is very, very true. And that is the defenses are going to get so much harder over the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks. This was not their stiffest test by any stretch of the imagination. Even DeJuan Jones, of course, DeJuan Jones is going to have a bigger test than he had tonight, even though he had to deal with Trey Hendrickson. When you get a complete defensive front or a more complete defensive front, then he's going to have his hands even more full than he did. So, yeah, the tests will get tougher, but they will get better. And they're going to have to meet the challenge. But I do think that they have some things to build on this game that lead me to think that they can win some games this season. I don't know how many games that's going to be, but if they and I've said this so many times, if they can win the turnover battle, they can win football games, but they have to do that.
Right. I mean, that's always so important in football, just in general. You've got to win that turnover battle. They're really going to have to, circle the wagons here, obviously, to use a cliche, because I don't know what's going to happen next week. I mean, I know what I'm going to predict is going to happen, but I also have watched a million NFL games, and I know that sometimes there's a reason any given Sunday is a phrase. So I don't know. If we could talk about how all the things that concerned us in this game, and then somehow they go to Baltimore next week. I mean, Baltimore lost to the Raiders last year in week 3, I think it was, and they were a Super Bowl contender. Weird things happen in the NFL. But here's one other thing, just as I was watching this game that I thought. First drive of the game for the Browns, 9 minutes, 50 seconds. Drive at the end of the half was 3 minutes and 55 seconds. 7 minutes and 40 seconds to start the second half. All of that's great. Like, that is Kevin Stefanski at his best, when he's controlling the clock, controlling the ground game. Well, not controlling the ground game in this case, but, controlling the clock, controlling possession, keeping that offense off the field, letting his offensive line be road graders. All of that's good. But the other thought I had, Ashley, and I want to get the rest of your opinions on this too. The other thought I had was, that's a really hard way to operate in the NFL. If you need to put together, 16 play drives, 11 play drives, 13 play drives. Like, obviously, on the one hand, you love that ability to possess the football. But on the other hand, it's really hard to live life in the NFL if you're relying on, we got to take 16 plays, 11 plays, 13 plays. The drive that led to the missed field goal was a 10-play drive. That's a big ask when you're going against a defense that's not the Cincinnati Bengals.
It is hard, and I think there's a misunderstanding maybe among some fans, because I told Dan I'm getting yelled at in my Twitter mentions today because I made a comment about how you can't have a kicking issue. Again, coming back to the kicker discussion, you can't have a kicking issue when your offense is not super explosive. And just because this offense, I think, did what it should do well, it's not what I would qualify as an explosive offense. Yes, Joe Flacco is going to take some shots downfield. I think the Bengals played a lot of zone today. It overall was not lending itself to them taking a ton of chances. I thought it was maybe a more conservative way to go about things, but also I don't necessarily hate it. I thought it was maybe more of what they should lean into last year. I do think once Quinshon Judkins is here, it's going to be a little bit easier just because you're going to have some more explosive runs, and he is going to be able to help you generate some of those explosive plays. I think you're still going to get some of those with Joe. They had 3 plays for longer than 20 yards today. 3 passing plays, but it's not obviously prime Patrick Mahomes going out there. It's 40-year-old Joe Flacco. There are some limitations. Kevin Stefanski has to call the things he likes to call, that he knows work, those easy gains, those quick screens. That's what they did a lot of in 2023 too. So I know it's difficult. It's not traditional in terms of what people think of as these high flying offenses now. But I do think it's kind of what more people wish they would have gotten back to last year, when the offense was just obviously not functional at all.
And before I go to you, Lance, we'll go back to Mary Kay real quick on this point, because she's going to run after this. But so listen, full disclosure, I was all ready to write a story about that first Browns drive. If they would have won this game, I'd have talked to a bunch of guys about it. Man, that was awesome. Jerry, you drew 3 pass interference penalties and all of this crazy stuff happened. That was going to be a story. But obviously, sometimes when a team loses, you just aren't going to get the answers that you need for a story like that. Mary Kay, to me, again, the negative is that's a really hard way, I think, to operate offensively. The positive is this is kind of who we knew the Browns would be, control the ball, play good defense, try and win that way. And even though they lost this game, they did play the way that they wanted to play, and they did control the football, and they did do a good job of, even though they couldn't run it as well as they want to, they did a good job of really kind of checking off a lot of the things I think they want to do to win football games this season. Obviously, it just didn't go their way.
Yeah, and I do think that as they go along, I think they have a lot more in that playbook. Now, I think that Joe demonstrated today that he can move well enough to run some of the bootlegs and the keepers that they want to run. He can do that. Remember, like when Brian Hoyer used to do that in the Kyle Shanahan offense. So he can do that. They can get him out in space and get him doing those kinds of things. He's not just some sitting duck back there. So I think it's important to kind of establish that. I thought he actually did not look like he fell off a cliff today. He didn't look like he aged. He didn't look like he lost arm strength or foot agility or anything like that. So I thought that was a positive to take away from this. He did not look like an old man out there today at the age of 40. But I think they have a lot more in the tank, a lot more in their arsenal that they're going to want to do. I think you're going to see jet sweeps. I think you're going to see trick plays. We already saw one today with Harold Fannin taking a direct snap. I think you're going to see more of that kind of stuff. I think you'll see more explosive plays. I think this offense is in its infancy stages because, once again, in part, they didn't know who their starting quarterback was going to be until they traded away Kenny Pickett. I mean, they had a pretty good idea since mid-August it was going to be Joe, but they couldn't really tailor things to him. Now they know who they have. They know what they've got. If they get Quinshawn back, they know what their running game is going to be. I think they're going to have a better idea of, okay, here's what Harold Fannin can do. Here's what David and Harold Fannin can do together. Here's what Isaiah Bond can do when when the heat is on downfield. So they'll learn more about themselves in these next couple of weeks. And then I think you will see much more tailored, specific game plans that completely play to their strengths. And I just have a feeling that it's going to look better as they go along.
Okay, Lance and I are going to hang out here a little while longer. Mary Kay and Ashley are going to jump off to go do a little bit more writing. So you can see all that at cleveland.com/Browns, of course. And Mary Kay will be back with a Hey MK. We're going to record that on Monday. So you'll hear more from her over the coming days. So Lance and I are going to hang out here for a few more minutes. And Lance, I want to pose that same question to you. This idea of these long, drawn out drives, which I think are great. And I love this stuff. It's one of the things back in 2020, the way Kevin Stefanski really controlled the clock, and he would earn those double dips, right? And he'd do those things where he would be able to, control the ball for like 4 minutes at the end of the first half and 4 minutes at the beginning of the second half, right? So I think those are positives, but you're an offensive guy. You've coached this stuff. That's a hard way to live if you need to go 11, 12, 13, 16 plays to get opportunities to put points on the board.
Well, you got to have some explosive. When listen to everybody talk, I agree completely. And here's why. Because as a coach, regardless of what level you're at, and you saw that last year with the Browns, regardless if it's high school, college, or pro, going 10 plus plays without making a mistake, without getting a penalty, without having 11 guys do it right for 7 to 8 minutes, 10 to 16 plays. That's really hard. Some bad things happen. Now, you can do that once in a while. You can do it maybe once or twice a game, but you got to have some explosives, which for me comes back to running the ball. If you can run the ball, then you create some explosives because you're going to get those safeties coming down in the box a little bit, right? So now you can take advantage of, if you're 2nd and 5, which I know you've heard me say, right? Now, if you're 2nd and 5, well, all right, now the defense is in base, and now you can run play action, and you get some one-on-ones because they're trying to stop the run. That's part of it. Now, one of the things that all 4 of us have said forever, they got to create some turnovers, right? So now you can get some short fields, right? And they don't get short fields because they don't get any turnovers, right? So they have to go 80 yards every time, which is just really hard to do. Now, I know they like that, and you can have good drives that start at your 10, and you get to the 50, and then for the Browns this year, and then you punt the ball, but you flip the field. And that's important too with this defense, that you make the other teams do that too, because other teams will have trouble doing this against the Browns. So for me, it's this complementary football that will lead to more explosive plays and kind of get them out of this. Like I always say, they have to do everything perfect right now. And when you have to do everything perfect, that's a recipe that's not very good at the NFL level. There's too much talent. You got to create some explosive. I always go back to the Texans game when they won during the regular season, right? In 23, that was the game where they did a lot of things wrong, but they had a lot of explosives. And when you have a lot of explosive, it kind of covers up explosives on offense and creating turnovers in defense. Hide a poor running game that day, or hide if you have a couple turnovers. That's the answer, right? And so I always felt like you're going to have maybe a turnover on offense, but if you can create them and get a couple of explosives for some scores, it kind of levels the playing field. And they just don't get that right now. And I agree with you, Dan. It's too hard to go 80 yards in 16 plays consistently as your way to score.
So, again, like this was such a frustrating game because it was just, it was funny. You obviously had to catch up a little bit to the game afterwards. So you weren't watching it live. And then I got a text from you, probably around like 5 o'clock, just brutal, I think is what you had written. Right. And I think that's the most frustrating part of this is there were so many things they did well in this game. And there were so many things that you can look at and say, whether it's the defense, the ball control, the way they got the rookies going. Like there were so many things to like about this game. And with the schedule they have, and I don't want to sit here and just play the schedule game over and over again, but it's real. This was such a winnable game, and it was a winnable game coming into it, and it was right there for them, and they didn't do it. And it just puts so much more pressure now as you move forward because, let's say you go to Baltimore next week and now you're 0-2, and then you got this Packers team. Again, that defense looked great today. Any given Sunday, anything can happen. I would never rule them out going to Baltimore to win next week. And I kind of have this game on now. Baltimore's not off to a great start. Whatever. We don't overreact to week ones, even with this football team. So I don't know. That's the thing that frustrates me is this game was right there for you to win. And the margins are so thin in the NFL in general, but I think they're especially thin for this football team. And one of the things I said all summer was you can't lose games because of your kicker, right? You can't lose games because you turn the football over. And they lost a game today because of their kicker and because they turned the football over. And that's frustrating. And I know Browns fans are frustrated and they're very doom and gloom today. And they should be frustrated because this was a game the Browns lost because of the Browns.
Yeah, and it's okay to be irritated. And like I said, without expectations, what are you doing, right? And that's the thing about Browns fans. That's the thing about you, Ashley, Mary Kate. Like we have expectations, right? We watch a lot of film. We do a lot of this stuff. You're at practice every day. So there's expectations. And I like that. And that's a game they should have won today. And for me, I go in tomorrow's meeting and I let my guys know that. That's a game we lost. We lost that game. Now, we don't want to dwell on it. We don't want to lose that game twice, right? That's my dad's line, right? Let's be pissed about it, but let's not lose the game twice, right? Let's erase it. But that's a game you should have won. Now, as you get into the work week, you got to attack. You can't worry about the schedule. It is what it is, and I agree with it. It's a real thing, and I think that's a good way to say it. But right now, it's Baltimore, right? You're going to watch this film, make your corrections, because if those corrections are good, are obtainable, you got to run the ball better. You got to do the things that you and I and Mary Kay and Ashley, we've talked about forever. You got to do those things better, but you were in a position to win. You didn't get railroaded. You didn't get boat raced. You lost the game because of you. So fix those things. Tell your guys we're going to fix those things and make it happen against Baltimore. Because, again, everybody's going to pick Baltimore, rightfully so. But you go out there and if people say you have no chance to win, you've proved them right or you've proved them wrong. And right now, the Browns are constantly finding ways to lose, even though they're in games. So you don't want to be down about it, but you also don't want to say it's okay. It's not okay to miss a kick. It's not okay to have, the fluke interceptions. It's not okay to have drops, as well as some of those guys played. There's some key drops in the game and things like that. Those things aren't okay. Now, I don't know if you necessarily have to get fired, all that kind of stuff, but you got to clean those things up, and you got to find ways to win. The way you're finding ways to lose, you got to find ways to win.
Right, and that's the point, right? The whole reason we do this stuff is to win football games. And a lot of teams have you watch them for 3 hours on a Sunday and it can be sloppy and it can be messy and it can be like, again, that's just how this league is. That's just how football is. But at the end of the day, they win. And unfortunately for this football team now, we're going on 10 games here. They've won one of their last 10. And I know every year is different and every season is different, but you've got Sed Tillman today saying like he's sick of losing. And like he owned it, like he owned that drop. To his credit, he talked after the game. He was really good. He owned that drop. Like guys are sick of losing. So now what it comes down to is good. You should be sick of losing because the whole point is to win. Now, what do you do with that? How do you channel that? How do you turn that? Okay, we're sick of losing. How do you go into that building Monday, you get your day off Tuesday, then come back Wednesday? How do you channel that sick of losing into what we're all here to do, and that's win football games.
Well, it's got to be. It's not about what you say. So this is a great kind of carryover to what the word everybody always used, the culture, right? And I've said it to you before. I think culture is overused. And here's a classic example. Everybody can say whatever they want, and it's like, I want to be really good. I want to win games. It's like with any job in any aspect of life, you have to go out and you have to do it. So whatever you say, that's great. Don't tell me, show me. So that comes down to things that you and I won't see, right? Meetings. Are they taking care of themselves? Are they getting proper rest? The minor details, because that's how close they are to winning. So are they watching the film they're supposed to watch? Are they practicing as hard as they should practice? I was talking about like the pass rushers that DeJuan Jones is going to see. Well, he goes against the best pass rusher every day, and he should have some live. Every week, he should go 5 to 10 reps live with Myles Garrett every week. That'll get him ready for whoever he plays, because no matter who he plays, he's not playing anybody better than Myles Garrett. So you can answer some problems within your own kind of building, right? And it's just got to be kind of like, not that we're sick of losing. Whatever you got to do, whatever you're doing now is not enough. And even if, I think they practiced well. I thought they had a great training camp. I thought they handled themselves very, very well in Philly. Every practice I was at, I came away thinking, they're doing really good things. Well, they got to do more. And whatever that is, I don't know what that is. That's when you sit down with your coaches and go, all right, what are we doing now and how can we change it? Because right now what we're doing doesn't work. And some of it's working. But whatever it is, the kicks, the drops, who knows? Do you have to be harder on them? Do you have to be, whatever it is, there's something that's got to change because, as we all know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Browns have to change it up a little bit, whatever that is. They did that during camp, hitting a little bit more, but they got to change it because they got to go out and they got to think they can beat Baltimore. They can't listen to all the noise. They got to figure it out because they'll be in the game. Most likely they'll be in the game fourth quarter because of that defense.
Well, according to one of our YouTube commenters, it might be hopeless because the Browns are cursed for how they've treated Shedeur Sanders. So maybe we're just wasting our time, Lance. Maybe the Browns are just wasting. They're cursed. So I don't because of what they did to Shedeur. By drafting him, I don't know, but this is.
Well, that's the one that
that's like it's always lurking.
Yeah, that's the thing that is these guys are all professionals, and I promise you. I don't know any of the coaches personally. I've talked to a couple of them, but I promise you, if whoever the best players are, those are the guys going on the field. These guys this is their livelihood. And I tell everybody, there's no conspiracy. There's none of that. He has a chance to be very good. He has a chance to be very successful, but he's not ready yet. And I'm with you on that. And it's, I don't think they're cursed. I just think they got to go play better. And I think they will. And hopefully they have that attitude too. Cause right now it's everybody telling them how bad they are. And that's what I would say going in. Everybody's telling you how bad you are. Your choice is to prove them right or prove them wrong. And that's how you got to look at it going into Monday.
But let's do this. Let's take the defensive line out of the equation. That's the easy answer. What's the thing that got you most excited about this football team today?
I was really excited about, I'm going to leave Carson Schwarzenegger out. He was really special today. But I tell you what, I kind of like the idea of what Njoku and Fannin can be in this 12 personnel. And if they can get Fannin to do some more things as a fullback type, they're going to cause personnel issues for that defense. And I've said that with you before. So I was most excited about Fannin, the things he did. He also showed some physicality in the run game that I didn't really see on his Bowling Green film. So he's a willing blocker. He doesn't have to be a great blocker. He just has to be good enough to kind of make people bring in more linebackers and create those matchups that Kevin likes to create in his 12 and 13 personnel with the empty and the spread set. So and I'll be honest with you, besides the drop, I thought Sed Tillman did some good run after catch today. I thought he did some positive things, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but I was happy with Tillman, but I was very kind of what I expected out of Fannin and Njoku and what they could be as they with what Joe Flacco likes to do and how they like to run this offense. I think those guys are going to have really big years.
Yeah, and I thought Dylan Sampson was good today. Obviously, look, he's a guy that I don't see him as an every down back. I just don't think that's who he is. I don't think he's patient enough. And I think we saw that a little bit in the run game today. There were some runs where he was maybe was a little the chaotic Tennessee Dylan Sampson, right? But when the Browns drafted him, they saw him as a guy that could catch passes, even though he didn't do a ton of that in Tennessee. And that's what he did today. He caught a ton of passes. I mean, you talk about the guys that were targeted. He was tied for second in targets. He had 8 targets. Fannin was targeted 9 times. Sampson and Tillman and Judy were each targeted 8 times. Sampson led the team with 8 catches for 64 yards. That's what the Browns envision him being. Once Quinshawn is up to speed, they envision Dylan Sampson being that change of pace guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. So I thought that was really encouraging. I think that's one of the things that I'm circling coming out of today. Like, okay, that's a sustainable thing that you can take forward. And if you can get Sampson into that right role, then this whole thing can really work. So now let's flip it real quick. What was the thing you came away today, aside, so we took the defensive line out of the equation on the good side. On the bad side, let's take the kicker out of the equation. What did you come away concerned about, or something that maybe reinforced, like, okay, I didn't love this coming into the season, and today didn't change that?
One thing, going back to Sampson, I thought he runs a lot heavier than he is, right? I stood next to him. He's a little guy. He breaks some tackles now. I was pretty impressed by that. I agree with you there. The thing that concerned me the most, without question, was the offensive line movement they got in the run game. They were unable to move 2 defensive tackles that had been moved pretty well in preseason, and they just didn't do a good job of vertically displacing them off the line of scrimmage. And I saw some good runs in Philly, but that's the thing they're still struggling with, is getting that movement inside against these defensive tackles. And if they're going to be committed to the run game, they're going to have to get some movement. And I'm not talking wide zone or gap schemes. Kevin Stefanski is a double team guy, and he runs a lot of double teams. All those schemes, even though they're different in how they attack, the foundation is double teams and vertical displacement, and they're just not getting that right now. So I thought they would be committed to it, and I thought those guys would do a little better job of that today. Not saying you can't do it next week. They did not. You rush for 40 yards on 29 carries. That's not very good, and that makes it tough on Joe Flacco. Then you're putting all the apples into Joe Flacco's kind of basket, and I don't think that's a recipe for success. So for sure, it was that offensive line. Hopefully, it's a work in progress, but that would be my biggest concern: their ability to move people.
I'm going to go with a position you brought up earlier. That safety position. Just still, I want to see more playmaking out of that position. And it's something we've talked about. Like, I want to see, this is a team that didn't force a turnover today. And that stuff has got to come from your safeties. Like safeties, one of the Bengals safeties got a turnover today on a deflected pass, right? So that's the stuff I want to see from the safety position. And we had a texter, one of our text subscribers, when I did my pregame Q&A, said, what would you need to see from these Browns safeties that would make you say the Browns shouldn't draft Caleb Downs next April? And my answer is nothing. Like, there is nothing in this safety room, even if, like, Grant Delpit could have a really good year, right? If they use him correctly, if he thrives kind of as an in-the-box safety, there's still nothing that would stop me from wanting to put Caleb Downs on this football team. Now, they might need to use that pick on a quarterback, but that's a discussion we'll save for April. They need playmaking out of that safety position. And they didn't really get it today, and it's still a position that I'm worried about moving forward. Today just didn't do anything to change that.
Well, and you and I have always talked about, and all of us have talked about, like, interceptions, right? But they're not even creating like tackles for a loss. They're not, all those game-changing type of or game, playmaking that changes kind of the course of a drive, right? They're not getting a tackle for a loss that makes it 2nd and 16, which is hard to recover for in the NFL because they play play soft. There's no strip sacks. There's no strip fumbles, and they're just not. Now, I think Delpit can be very successful. For me, the concern, Delpit is, I think he's so talented. I just think he's got to be, even when he's down in the box, he's got to create more panic on the offense and more chaos. He's not doing that right now. But I'm with you. The free safety is the guy that one high hat is the guy who's got to make game-saving tackles, big hits, jarring hits. He's got to get a pick, like you're saying. He's got to be a ball hawk, right? You get those tip interceptions from being a ball hawk, being around the ball. That being a ball hawk is about knowing where ball is going because you've watched film and all that kind of stuff. It all ties into this kind of thing with the turnover. So they got to continue to get better at that. And I'm with you right now. You're hoping the young quarterbacks play well. And even if they don't, Caleb Downs is a guy that, if you're talking about a guy who can make this defense even better, it'd be a guy like that. Because that's the one thing they're missing, Dan. They're missing the ability to turn the ball over, which is killing them. And they're still in games. And they're not doing some of those things.
Well, earlier I said the Ravens started slow, and since then they've gotten a Derrick Henry touchdown. Kyle Hamilton just made a really nice tackle on a 3rd down to set up for. This is going to be a tough game next week, Lance. When,
yes.
When I talk to you Thursday, I can already circle a lot of the things you're going to be talking about. This is going to be a challenge next week for sure.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing I was telling everyone. When you talk about culture and having an identity, you're right. The scouting report, me and you could do it right now. Obviously, there'll be some changes to it, but you know what you're going to get defensively. You know who the playmakers are. You know what run schemes they're going to run. They're not tricking you. They're a team that has an identity. They know who they are. They know who their players are. And without even going through my scouting report, which I'll get done tomorrow, it'll be exactly what we think it is because that's who they are.
Okay, this was fun. Live Browns post-game pod here. If you were watching this on YouTube, it's Orange and Brown Talk Podcast. So what you got to do is you got to go to Apple Podcasts or you got to go to Spotify. You got to find us. You got to get subscribed. And then you don't have to. You can watch us. We put them on YouTube. But if you don't want to just listen while you're running or driving or whatever, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Spotify, search Orange and Brown Talk. Now, if you're listening to the podcast, and you're like, man, I wish I missed that live show. I want to see these guys talk after the game. Go to our YouTube channel. That's Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Get subscribed there. I mentioned our texters. That's Football Insider, cleveland.com/Browns. That's the blue banner at the top of the page. And you can find our socials on Instagram or Orange and Brown Talk. On X, we are Orange Brown Talk. I think that's everything. Mary Kay and Ashley were here earlier. I will be talking to them throughout the week. Obviously, we'll be back with a Hey Mary Kay podcast coming up on Monday. Lance, thanks for hanging out a little longer, talking a little football with me. It's always fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, my friend. I'll see you on Tuesday.
All right. We will talk to everyone later. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody.